One night, a terrible accident happened on a quiet road. A man's car was crushed, and he was trapped inside, fighting for his life. But here's the shocking part. Just a few hours earlier, this same man had insulted someone because of his skin color. He never imagined that the person he hurt would be the one standing in front of him when he needed help the most. What would you do in that moment? Walk away, or save the life of the one who disrespected you? Stay with me until the end, because this story will completely change the way you look at hate and forgiveness. Marcus Green was a hard-working man in his 30s, known for his calm nature and strong values. He grew up in a small town where racism was nothing new to him. He had faced cruel words, suspicious stares, and unfair treatment more times than he could count. But Marcus believed in staying focused on his work and never letting hate drag him down. On the other side of town lived Richard Collins, a wealthy businessman. Richard carried himself with pride, but his pride often turned into arrogance. He believed people like Marcus were beneath him, and he made sure his opinions were heard. Earlier that very day, in a grocery store parking lot, Richard had mocked Marcus loudly, calling him names that cut deep. Shoppers turned their heads, some in shock, others in silence. Marcus said nothing. He simply walked away, refusing to fight. Hate with hate. That evening, as Marcus drove home from work, the memory of Richard's insults still lingered. But life has its own way of turning tables. Just a few miles down the road, Marcus saw flashing lights and a cloud of smoke. A car had crashed badly into a tree, metal twisted and glass shattered. When he pulled over and looked closer, his heart skipped a beat. The man trapped inside was none other than Richard Collins, the very man who had humiliated him only hours earlier. Marcus stood still for a moment, staring at the wreck. This was the man who had treated him as less than human. And now fate had placed Richard's life in Marcus's hands. Marcus's first instinct was to freeze. He stood on the roadside, the sound of the crushed car hissing with smoke and the faint cries of Richard echoing into the night. For a moment, Marcus's mind replayed the ugly scene from earlier that day, the harsh words, the looks of superiority, the sting of humiliation. A part of him whispered, "Walk away." After all, wasn't this justice? Wasn't this life showing Richard what it feels like to be powerless? But Marcus wasn't built that way. His mother had always taught him that hate only destroys, never heals. Richard, half-conscious, groaned from inside the wreck. Blood trickled from his forehead, his arm pinned under the steering wheel. His voice, weak and desperate, called for help. Marcus glanced around. The road was empty. He could leave, and no one would ever know he had been there. Richard would simply be another victim of a tragic accident. But something inside Marcus refused to let him turn away. He rushed to the car, pulling at the twisted door handle. It wouldn't budge. Richard cried out in pain, each second making the situation more urgent. Marcus ran back to his truck, grabbed a crowbar he kept for emergencies, and returned to the wreck. His hands trembled as he jammed the tool into the doorframe, forcing it open with every ounce of strength. Smoke thickened, and the sharp smell of gasoline filled the air. Time was running out. Marcus leaned inside, unfastening Richard's seatbelt. The businessman's eyes opened for a moment, blurry with pain. Recognition flashed in them. Even in his broken state, Richard realized who was saving him. The same man he had mocked. Marcus dragged him out, laying him carefully on the grass away from the burning car. Richard gasped for air, blood soaking his shirt. Marcus grabbed his phone, calling emergency services. Minutes felt like hours as they waited. When the sirens finally broke the silence, Marcus felt a strange calm wash over him. He had made his choice, not for Richard, not for revenge, but for himself. For the man he wanted to be. The night felt endless, but by morning Richard Collins lay in a hospital bed, bandaged and pale, his body connected to tubes and monitors. The accident had nearly taken his life, and the truth was clear. Without Marcus, He wouldn't have survived. When Richard finally opened his eyes fully, the first face he saw wasn't a doctor or a nurse. It was Marcus, standing quietly in the corner of the room. Marcus hadn't come for thanks or recognition. He just wanted to make sure Richard was alive before he left. For a long moment, Richard stared at him, struggling to process everything. The same man he had insulted, the man he had treated as less than human, had been the one to pull him out of fire and smoke. His throat tightened. For the first time in his life, Richard had no words. The arrogance, the pride, the casual cruelty, all of it felt small compared to the weight of what Marcus had done. He wanted to speak, to apologize, but his voice cracked, and shame kept the words locked inside. Marcus didn't demand anything from him. He didn't ask for gratitude. He simply nodded as if to say, "You're alive." That's enough. Tears welled in Richard's eyes, though he quickly turned his face away, embarrassed by his own weakness. But deep inside, something cracked. The moment was not just about survival. It was about truth, an undeniable reminder that character is not measured by power, money, or skin color. It's measured by humanity. In the days that followed, Richard Collins remained in the hospital, healing not just from broken bones, but from something deeper. He thought endlessly about that night, replaying the moment Marcus had reached into the flames to pull him out. The memory burned stronger than the crash itself. It wasn't just survival. It was a lesson written into his very soul. Richard began to see the world differently. The cruel words he had once thrown so casually now felt like poison. He realized how many people he had hurt, how many moments of kindness he had crushed under his arrogance. Yet Marcus, the man he had mocked, had shown him compassion when he least deserved it. That truth weighed heavier than any injury. Marcus, on the other hand, carried no bitterness. He never returned to Richard asking for an apology, nor did he seek recognition. He believed that true strength was in rising above hate, not sinking into it. To him, saving Richard's life wasn't about proving a point. It was about staying. True to the values he lived by. Eventually, Richard did gather the courage to speak. His apology was not grand, not polished, but raw and filled with guilt. Marcus listened quietly, then simply placed a hand on his shoulder and said nothing. Sometimes silence carries more power than words. From that day forward, Richard changed, slowly, but surely. He began treating people with respect, not because of their status or skin color, but because they were human. And so, the story leaves us with a question we must all face. When life gives you the chance to return hate with hate, or to answer hate with humanity, which path would you choose? If you've experienced or witnessed the same, share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so together we can spread the message further.